Hello and welcome. This is Critical Discussions, episode 19. And today we've got quite a lot of ground to cover. So let's start with Kremlin-Linked group arranged payments to European politicians to support Russia's annexation of Crimea. Leaked emails show how Duma insider built a network of analysts, journalists, and others who helped him push Kremlin's interests abroad. And it's going to be a theme in today's episode, at least to a degree, how Russia tries to influence politicians in other countries or tries to overthrow regimes in other countries and things that spreads misinformation, propaganda, things like that. So the network basically helped bring political figures to Russia to act as election observers. They arranged troops to occupy Crimea. They tried to bribe politicians. From, interestingly, which states would you think the politicians were from? Take a wild guess. They tried to bribe people in Italy. Sorry, in Italy. They tried to bribe people in Italy. They tried to bribe people in Austria, in Germany, in Czech Republic. So yeah, basically, kind of your regular, I guess, usual suspects. Still, nonetheless, very interesting. It's a good article, good big investigation. Basically, first done, I think in probably Russian language, I guess, but there is an English version as well. So I'm obviously gonna link it in the description under YouTube video, or if it's gonna be in the form of a podcast, in the show notes to the podcast. I definitely suggest you to read it. It's from February 2023, and it's an interesting read because, once again, it kind of shows how exactly Russia operates, what they're doing, so on and so forth. This is like basically, when you hear a lot of things like pro-Russian, you can be basically sure that these people are bought. And so when you hear even, I mean, there are fucking stupid idiots as well. I'm not sure like if Elon Musk is bought by Russia, or do they have some compromise on him. The fact that he repeats basically the same messages that pro-Kremlin and just Kremlin would want, it's already concerning. But on a bigger scale, like a lot of people who are pushing anti-Ukrainian propaganda, anti-Ukrainian misinformation, just spread some garbage, they are being paid by Kremlin. And this is just one investigation, obviously, but I'm pretty sure there are like dozens of, or if not hundreds of stories like that, which aren't being investigated, not yet anyway, and people don't know about. But yeah, definitely take a look at this. I'm gonna put, once again, links to all the articles in the description. And now let's talk about other thing. Friends of Putin, and actually like Putin's basically wallet to a large extent, Rottenberg and Timchenko, they have Finnish citizenship, and apparently they acquired this Finnish citizenship back in 1999 and 2003 without being checked by a SUPO, which is like a Finnish Security Intelligence Services. Yeah, that's that. Which is apparently like not how it's supposed to be done by law. I don't know really if they can be like stripped away of their citizenship because of this. Who knows? I'm not sure really what it entails, because they are under sanctions in EU, so far as I know. In America, I think, as well. So I'm not sure really if this new finding kind of would help to strip them of their citizenship or not, but just the news, just a little news story, just to kind of say that um, even like the best or one of the best countries still not kind of still can be subject to scrutiny, let's put it that way, and not above kind of the law, and still can do shit, to be honest. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Central Clinical Hospital classifies procurement records to conceal Putin's oncology appointments. This is exactly what it sounds like. The contract, because some years ago, Russia actually, when Russia was on a path to perhaps create some reforms and whatnot, they've arranged this electronic system of procurement where people can actually go and take a look what exactly the like governmental institutions are trying to buy, what are the contracts, so on and so forth, right? So it was all done sort of to create some transparency in the government and kind of gain the trust of people. And that system actually brought a lot of sort of flag onto the government itself, because obviously they're stealing, they're buying some garbage, they're like over budgeting, so on and so forth, like to obviously give some money to like corrupt friends or things like that. And so over the past like 3-4 years, that system has been tightened down and kind of basically closed off more and more. I mean, I still don't know like how can it still like functions to any degree really right now, because obviously the Russia right now is like basically totalitarian state which is at war with the whole world, basically with Ukraine obviously, but in a sense like in the ideological sense basically with the whole at least normal Western world. And so like I don't understand how any of that like old system still works, but this is just one point, one less sort of institution that discloses their actual buying and things like that, procurement. And this just happened to be Central Clinical Hospital, that apparently serves Putin, things like that. Just an interesting little piece of news that perhaps there is something with him wrong. Perhaps he does have some oncology. It was speculated that he's got like a thyroid cancer or something like that, but unfortunately, of all the cancers you can get, like thyroid or like a testicular cancer is basically, at least if you don't have metastasis and things like that, these are the most like treatable types of cancer. So if it's true, unfortunately does nothing good for the people of the world, because that fucking cunt can still live long life. And of course having access to some medicine, and having access even right now, even despite sanctions and whatnot, I'm pretty sure he would have access to like Western medicine, things like that, unlike actual citizens of his country. But yeah, basically they're trying to hide something, that's for sure. Quick news about actual Russian war in Ukraine, Russian aggression, and the continuation of attacks. Obviously, to at least to an extent, there were less severe attacks in the past like a month or something, because presumably Russia was grouping up and trying to perhaps for 24th of February, which will be a year of this war quite soon, right? They were trying to regroup, they were trying to mobilize their kind of troops and perhaps capture some territories, some new territories. And apparently now, in the past like week or so, in the beginning of February and till now, maybe a couple of weeks, apparently their new kind of offensive operation has started. And so, in 3 days, Russia lost over 100 vehicles, including 36 tanks, in attacks on Avdiivka and Ugledar. This is by open source intelligence group, basically, that collects information from open sources, from public sources, basically, Oryx. And so, yeah, apparently, and all the news basically that come from this region right now, from the region of Ugledar, Avdiivka, says that this is basically World War One sort of trench warfare, just like complete shit show. People from like Wagner Group and things like that, or even like newly mobilized Russians, they're just like sending those peoples in waves, and Ukrainians just shoot them down as waves of them, literally like zombies. I'm not sure how much of it is true, because obviously some reports could be exaggerated, right, from one side or the other, but there are there are very little reasons to believe this is not true, because yeah, Russia has been doing the same sort of tactics as they've been doing back in 1940, one and onwards, with their attacks. Basically, they're literally throwing meat at the problem, and yeah, nothing has changed basically since then. Nothing. They've learned nothing in like 80 years. They've learned no new sort of tactical sort of no new tactics. They still think wars are won basically like that. You just throw people at the problem. And yeah, good that those people are not particularly well trained, don't particularly have too much equipment or too much skill. However, just because there are quite a lot of them, I think they still either have captured some specific little towns, or Ukraine has decided to leave them, because it, like it's a no man's land basically. It's like completely wasted land, and these are we're not talking, by the way, about the towns of like 100,000 people, of like a million people, things like that. We're talking about towns, villages, even like 1,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people at max before the war. Right now, I don't think there will be anybody there really. Maybe. But yeah, basically, that's the tactics of Russians. The ratio of losses was about 5-1 on February 10, and overall ratio of losses of equipment is 3-1 Russian to Ukrainian, which is interesting. And they didn't really talk about the amount of potentially killed people, but by reports from Ukraine, it's a lot of them, like a lot. So yeah. Just in general, I just want to remind once again, if you want to read some good information about Russia and about the whole situation in Russia, Ukraine, so on and so forth, the Insider, they have English version. There is also English version of Important Stories, and this is what we're going to talk about next. Important Stories also, they're using the storage Google APs, I think, to circumvent sort of the blocking and sanctions in Russia, so Russians can also read it. I'm going to leave all the links once again in the description of the websites that have English version of the news, right? Once again, they don't have all the news, but they have like some important investigations, important bigger news, and so that's already kind of a good start. And if you wanna obviously follow more, I'm trying to cover like bigger stories here on this channel in my videos. So follow this as well, subscribe, and yeah, share the videos as well, so more people will follow YouTube and other platforms, TikTok, whatever, start recommending channel more, and more people, yeah, can get access basically to this information, which usually is basically cut off by the wall of Russian language, because not everybody can actually speak that language, and translations from Russian language to English sometimes are, even by the best search translators like the Google one, are not particularly amazing. So yeah, just wanted to remind you once again that subscribe and following both on Twitch, on YouTube, on TikTok is really appreciated, and yeah, really helps. So the news is the West has banned the sales of components for weapon production to Russia, but Russia is still buying them. And that was the investigation by Important Stories, Reuters, and Royal United Services Institute. Once again, all the links in the description. I encourage you to read the whole thing yourself, basically. But yeah, basically, obviously, like in all those drones that Russia is using, like Arlan, for example, there is quite a lot of electronics, obviously, and Russia has barely any production of electronics, and so usually they're just buying off the shelves parts and using them. And despite like despite the ban on sales, still like the drones like Orlan is still using components from American Altera, Xilinx, Texas Instruments, Microchip, Analog Devices, Linear, all of these companies, which obviously like these companies are not particularly, like, nobody should be like sort of boycotting those companies, because this is just the components that they're using, and this is just the components that like Texas Instruments, Microchip, whatever, they're just selling it to the market, and Russia just finds ways how to buy those components. And interestingly, they're doing this through like intermediary, basically, companies, obviously how you would expect, and countries that sort of help with this procurement: Chinese, Turkish, even US. So there is basically some ground here to work on the sanctions, to work on tightening up the sanctions, to track better those sales of, especially of the companies who are somehow connected to Russia. I think like all of those companies who have any connections to Russia should be kind of under scrutiny in all of the countries. Obviously China, probably, because China itself is in a bit of a war against the West, so to speak. They probably will continue with this, but intermediaries like I'm saying, in US, in Turkey, things like that, like they in Europe as well, they should be scrutinizing all of this a bit more. So yeah, but yeah, you're gonna have this this link in the description, and yeah, I'm gonna put a couple of them because they talk slightly differently about this thing. But yeah, all the links are in the description. Now then, I was talking about this news, not this particular, but just in general, about the aviation in Russia in the upcoming months, years, and so on and so forth. And well, it's happening. Since mid-2020, the number of serious accidents in Russian aviation has skyrocketed. I'm not sure, like, skyrocketed is a great, really... this is a bit of a... overselling it. But because aviation industry is in general quite safe, any new accident, even if it's a smaller one, like landing gear not properly deploying or having some issues, things like that, right? This is already a major concern, obviously, because even though aviation is quite safe, any major kind of problem can lead to deaths of literally like hundreds of people in one go, basically. So obviously you want to have as best of like the technology, as best of suppliers, as best of the replacement parts and things like that as you can, or not as you can, as you should, as like the manufacturers demand. However, Russia, now under sanctions, obviously, and aviation was one of the industries which is controlled basically by like just handful actually of companies, right? Like 2, 3, 4, 5 max companies are responsible for the majority of all the fleets of the planes, and they have basically exited Russia. And so now Russia's trying to find spare parts, find some parts in from, this is just insanity, from African partners, India, other friendly countries, which is basically saying China, mostly. Iran as well, apparently, was helping with some things, but the as you can see, the accidents are getting sort of piled up a little bit, because, well, yeah, because you need to service your planes, and if you don't have spare parts, well, you can either cannibalize your existing fleet, which is what Russia is doing or will be doing for sure, because maybe right now it hasn't been like so much time that the fleet is like completely decrepit, but obviously it's going to get worse over time. And I'm just going to track this this particular news because I myself is terrified of flights in any normal circumstances, and just thinking that right now some Russians are still flying knowing full well, or maybe they don't know, and if they don't know, how the fuck they're not using their brains and don't follow the news at all. I don't understand how anybody right now in Russia would fly. Why would anyone fly, and how could they? Because each time you basically take you basically go into the plane right now in Russia is well, it's not like 1% of a percent that some accident will occur. Now it's kind of 50-50 really, because you don't know, was this plane serviced well, was it not, the spare parts, where did they come from? And what's interesting is that these imported parts are not going any certification, so you don't know the quality of the metals, for example, right, in some spare part, whatever, in some landing gear, right? You don't know, like, some bolts, for example, right? Is the metal strong enough, right? Was it, I don't know, was it properly transported? Did it undergo some sort of giant kind of changes in whatever temperature, something like that? I don't know. The fact of the matter is, right now, because Russia was basically unprepared for the war, most of the Russia anyway. Well, this is the reality, and it's pretty fucking scary, to be honest. Because, yeah, well, it's a plane. If something goes wrong, you're fucked. So yeah. Once again, news, all of these things, all the articles will be in a description, because obviously it's quite a lengthy article, and they're comparing it to Iran, for example, so on and so forth. Just, it's an interesting article, so yeah, I'm going to encourage everybody to take a look at it yourself. One interesting news is that 2 Russians fled mobilization and reached Alaska by dinghy, and they swam a lot of kilometers, actually. 300 miles. I don't understand why we're talking about miles here. But they swam from this Egvekinot city from here all the way to Gamble, in Alaska, basically, which was 300 miles, or like whatever, almost 400 kilometers. I don't really know why couldn't they like travel all the way to some closer sort of cities that are closer to the Alaska and cross by water like 60 kilometers instead of 300 something, 380 or something like that. But people have done what they had to do to escape mobilization, and this is just a little kind of glimpse into like just what Russia is right now. People like look at them. These are not like young people. These are people in their like 50s probably, who still can be mobilized right now. And you get immobilized means you're gonna die in like a month, max 2 months. So it's basically a death sentence, and people are trying to like escape Russia in a dinghy. And these are not the people who are like super, as far as I at least understood, they didn't know like English, for example, or didn't know it that well anyway. And so these are people who are leaving everything, like literally stock on some supplies, take this tiny boat and just go on this voyage. And they give away their possessions. They weren't able to buy actual dollars, so they just transferred their money, savings, whatever, to friends, relatives, and then just went. Like, think about that. This is insane shit. If you're like thinking about it for more than 2 seconds, you are forced to leave your country. You're forced to leave everything behind that you've tried to work for, and your savings that you had, like your life that you had, just so you can save your own life. Because mobilization equals death, because they're literally sending newly mobilized people at the front line as a cannon meat. It's insane. It is insane. Okay. Out of 14,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped by Russia, Ukraine has managed to retrieve only 125, says Children's Rights Commissioner. And this is horrible. Like, this is absolutely horrific. And this goes underreported in quite a lot of articles, just in general, goes underreported. And when people like Jordan Peterson, like Elon Musk, I've discussed him in a previous episode. Go listen to that if you wanna have like a deeper understanding what I'm talking about, or like Kim.coms, like all of those like sort of Western celebrities, rich people, the fucks who don't understand anything about this particular war. This somehow goes missing, I guess, when they're saying that, like Ukraine should go and like into peace talks with Russia or whatever. You understand that literal children were separated from the parents, deported into Russia, were stolen from their families, captured by Russia, were sent to Russia, and now in a lot of times, like people, not only like families don't know where their children are, and children cannot necessarily access the like either social media or like WhatsApp, even things like that, to contact their parents and tell them that they're okay, or tell them their whereabouts and things like that. This is insane. And that's a lot of children. 14,000 people. That is a lot. That is a full town of just children who were stolen by Russia. And all those cunts don't fucking think about it. Who somehow justify peace talks with Russia or some shit like that. They don't even think about it. It's disgusting, to be honest. But yeah, I hope all these kids will be returned to their families in Ukraine. That is even if their families will be alive, which is not a given as well. Which is just horror. It's just horror. And some people just don't even think about it. Don't want to think about it, presumably, apparently. Because if you actually think about it, it is fucking horrific. And everyone who's responsible for this, which is starting from Putin and then going down his fucking apparatus, both in the government and in the military, they all should be fucking held accountable in Hague tribunal, life sentences to all of those cunts. Because this is unimaginable horrors and tragedy. All right. Speaking of unimaginable horrors and tragedies, Putin assured me he wouldn't kill Zelensky. This was said by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. And last year, apparently, he had a call basically with Putin, and basically when the war started, and Putin pledged and tell him that I'm not gonna kill Zelensky. The cunt. First of all, he visited apparently. I don't know. Like, apparently Russia supports Israeli. I understand it's like a bit of a weird situation, whatever. So he met last year with Putin. So after annexation of Crimea, after all of those things, right? How can you you asking a question? Would you kill Zelensky? And we know for a fact that Russia tried to assassinate Zelensky more than 10 times. I think it was reported not that long time. I'm pretty sure it was in 2023 reported. And how can you believe the cunt who can say whatever the fuck he wants and then he does either the opposite or whatever the fuck he wants? How can you believe this person? He's a fucking maniac. He's a sociopath. He's absolutely brain-dead moron, because only brain-dead moron could have this fucking dumb thought in his mind to actually start a fucking war in 21st century versus another quite a big country, but not a nuclear country. So, I'm pretty sure if Ukraine had nuclear weapons, Russia would probably never actually dare to try to do what they've done in Crimea and now what they're doing all over Ukraine. So yeah, basically, I don't even want to kind of retell all of this because it's pretty stupid. And the fact that Israel is still sort of on the fence right now, tries to play the political games and things like that, it's kind of not a good look. Let's put it that way. Not a good look for Israel. So yeah. He says that one negative moment occurred when he raised with Putin the issue of Zelensky and said that the Ukrainian leader wanted to meet with him. Bennett recalled, he was the nicest person in the world up until then, and then suddenly he gave me that look and said they're Nazis, warmongers, I will not meet with him. How can you even say he was the nicest person in the world? This is a cunt who ordered to invade Crimea 8 years ago. You then go to Russia, you meet him, and you say he's the nicest person in the world. Are you fucking brain dead or something? Are you fucking brain dead? So yeah. Either moron or a brain dead or both, not really sure. I'll put the link in the description if you want to read this shit, but yeah. It's just pathetic, to be honest. Pathetic. And this is what I talked about in the beginning, that Maya Sandu says that indeed Kremlin tries to, or at least had plans to overthrow a Moldova government. And Zelensky did warn about it before, and apparently now they're getting some intelligence themselves from inside the country and actually confirming that this is indeed sort of Putin's plans and things like that. So this is the way. This is the way of Russia, basically, trying to create conflicts all over the world, trying to create madness, trying to create chaos, destruction. This is Russia. It should be fucking. Like, I don't know how, but I don't know how to do it really without like impacting like regular Russian people who might want to escape to other countries, so on and so forth. How to isolate Russia from the rest of the world, but somehow it should be done because this is what they're doing. This is this regime, current regime. It's not the Russia in general. It's just fucked up. Kind of connected to this, TikTok discovered and blocked a web of Russian propaganda accounts. Almost 1,500, more than 1,500, 1,600 accounts that spread propaganda about the war in Ukraine to users in Europe, and I'm pretty sure probably to US as well. At least maybe like English speaking, yeah, because there was a Ukraine there. Accounts who were disguised as European users, and so that's why sometimes you see on Twitter, I'm pretty sure that's at least like one of the reasons why you see sometimes on Twitter people from supposedly West who speak basically pro-Kremlin shit, and yeah, they're kind of spreading like pro-Kremlin propaganda, anti-Ukrainian propaganda, things like that. And of course, there was also Russian language propaganda accounts operating from Georgia. Um, Also, not absolutely not news to me because I know like Russian segment of the internet is absolutely filled with garbage, trolls, bots, paid Kremlin accounts, and it's absolute trash. That's why I almost never read any information um, in like Russian segment of the internet besides like few very selected resources like Medusa, like the Insider, like the important stories, things like that, things that are like the Moscow Times, for example, Deutsche Welle, things like that. Obviously, Russian BBC, all the sort of vetted and good quality source material. Otherwise, if it's not like coming from good quality material, it's like it's total shit. It's total shit show. And related to this, Prigozhin, who is creator of this, which is incorrectly labeled as private military company because this is not a private military company, army, whatever. Not at all. Evgeny Prigozhin. He said that he indeed has created what is known in Russia as Fabrika Trolli or troll factory. So this man not only is responsible for basically having like a wing in like Russian army who does like despicable things, who is actually hiring from jail actual people who serve jail time. Obviously, you cannot do it unless it is allowed to you by the highest of the higher ups, right? So he's doing it basically for the Russian army, but doing it with the hands of people who serve jail time, right? But he also is responsible. This piece of shit is responsible for creating a troll factory that spreads misinformation, pro-Kremlin propaganda across the whole world, and that troll factory was indeed involved in 2016 presidential election in the United States. Department of what is this State Department of the United States in 2022 put a basically what did they do? They put a reward for any information basically about Prigozhin and this agency of internet research investigations for up to $10 million basically for any information. So like it's not like just done once or wherever. This is like they have a lot of people literally type in shit in Russia, type in shit in English, and trying to influence basically people's opinions. This is reality. If you've never heard about this, just Google Russian troll factory, for example, and you're gonna get some information about it. But the worst thing is that it works, because I am looking right now on my Twitter, and somehow I don't know what they're doing there with algorithms and things like that, but I'm getting a shit ton of morons and absolutely brain dead, like conspiratorial shit, even though I'm not subscribed to any of those garbage, low quality sources. But I get some retweets, or I get some just like promotional, again, not promotional, but like just the algorithm pushes these things. And it's outrageous that, like, there was this one cunt who literally started, one person in his own blog without any credentials, any credible sources, nothing, started this rumor. The guy who is right now basically was long time ago, credible either journalist or whoever the fuck he was, I forgot already. Now he's basically pro-Russian moron in his late senile years. He started basically spreading the news that basically United States blew up Nord Stream. Now it's like on Twitter all over the place, at least on my Twitter somehow. And actually basically, like, there is no no credible confirmation of any of that, and yet people go and repeat that shit. And I'm pretty sure that information is being like kind of boosted and multiplied and retweeted and things like that by those like propaganda accounts, by the troll factory, things like that. And it's just so sad that a lot of like gullible people exist obviously all over the world, and a lot of people in the West after whole COVID situation have deep distrust in their own governments and in the media, deservedly so. But one issue is one issue, and another issue is another issue. So when people, for example, say that BBC is like a garbage resource, I'm like, I don't know what you particularly talking about, but when it comes to the talking and presenting information about the war in Ukraine, Russian war in Ukraine, they've been credible. You can trust them on it. And it's just so kind of unfortunate that people cannot separate different issues and cannot like properly critically think about those particular things. Anyway, enough of that shit. One little thing that kind of near and dear to my heart in a way, because I am still in Belarus. I'm still stuck in the shithole. Poland to close major crossing point on Belarus border due to security concerns. In fact, the announcement comes just a day after Belarusian court sentenced journalist Andrzej Pogzabut, something like that, a leader of Belarus minority Polish community, to 8 years in prison for reporting on Lukashenko, who is now the president, Belarusian president, who is a fucking dictator and usurper. Well, first of all, if you are leader of Belarus, leader of Polish community, why the fuck are you reporting? And you are in Belarus. Why the fuck are you doing anything publicly and reporting on this usurper and dictator, mustache cunt, fucking cockroach, piece of shit, Lukashenko? Are you like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get into jail, Andrzej, whatever his correct name is? Are you trying to get to jail, or are you trying to get to jail? I don't understand that particular thing, right? But second of all, and I've seen this and that kind of, that pissed me off way too much, probably. That some Belarusian opposition, who are right now in exile from Belarus, who are right now basically hiding in Lithuania, Latvia, in Poland, they actually speak out about the fact that Poland Latvia, Lithuania should close the border with Belarus um, until basically that political prisoner from Poland will get released, which obviously will not happen. I mean, not what will not happen is the prisoner will not get released. But so those cunts supposedly represent um, basically alternative government in exile, and they are actually acting against the interest of the Belarusian people, because obviously if you close all the borders, there aren't that many countries that surround Belarus. One of them is at war with Russia, obviously Ukraine, which will not you can't escape from Belarus to Ukraine. One is Russia, absolute piece of shit of the country, and three other are obviously Lithuania, Poland, and Latvia. And if those countries, Baltic states, if they close the border for Belarusian people who are trying to escape this piece of shit country, dictatorship nightmare of a state, and you, as like leaders of Belarusian opposition, are forcing this, you are actually supporting this, well, you're a total piece of shit. This is I couldn't find a tweet that I've done, but I did call them out as a piece of shit twat who is actually against Belarusian people, really, because Belarusian regime doesn't give a fuck about. Yeah, you close the border, okay, it's gonna be better for us. We don't have to worry about so many people trying to leave the country because they cannot leave the country. Who are you trying to? Who are you trying to actually help by doing this, Poland? Latvia, Lithuania. You're literally helping dictator. You're literally helping dictator, and also, although I understand that people should be smart enough to realize that you shouldn't sort of think bad on the countries that do close the borders for Russia, for Belarus, etc. You do antagonize people still. You're trying to if you are trying to escape as a person, and then the other country, instead of like inviting you and saying yeah, go ahead, like escape that shitty regime, they instead say no, fuck you, go back and I don't know, fight against regime somehow with no weapons, no real opposition. And the opposition itself are saying, yeah, fuck you people, we have escaped, we did have money, we did have some political sort of influence and kind of credibility that that allowed us basically to escape to other countries. But you fucking peasants, fuck you, we don't care about you. This is what bothers me so much. This is what bothers and pisses me off so much, that it's still basically regular people are punished for things that regimes are doing. It's insane. It's insane. And I thought like it would change over time, and countries would understand that this is not the way how you do it. No, not at all. So yeah. One more interesting piece of news now, this time from Russia. Putin signed into law a bill that allows lawmakers not to declare their income publicly. So, under the new legislation, deputies will still have to file some income declarations, but information will only appear publicly in a summarized format without personal data. Basically, it's an invitation. You want to steal, you want to do whatever the fuck you want as if it's the last day of Pompeii. Please, go ahead. This is what's going on. Oh, you thought corruption was bad before? Oh no. Now it's gonna get even fucking worse. Because now they have nothing to lose, basically. All those cons, or most of those cons, already or will be banned from European Union, UK, United States if things go well and if actual politicians in the West do their job properly, right? And then what are you left with? You're left with Russia. So still how much you want. Great. Excellent. As if Russia wasn't corrupt enough before. Interesting news once again from Belarus. What's called a stop list of musicians, artists who are basically banned from performing in Belarus. Quite a big list in which somehow not only like Belarusian or Russian artists who stand against basically a Russian war in Ukraine, against Belarusian support of this war, etc. somehow, somehow there are people like Lady Gaga, for example, in that in that list, which is like, yeah, of course, because Lady Gaga just wanted to visit Belarus, just just always wanted to perform in this shithole of a country, or like Cher, for example, right? And like, no, no, she will not be allowed here. This is just like, I don't understand these people, but yeah, basically almost like 100 people, 87 presumably people, or artists, bands, things like that, who are not allowed to sing songs. Are not allowed to sing songs. Obviously, bands like Lepis Trubetskoy, they were like vocal against Belarusian regime for the longest time, and they've been banned for the longest time, for example, in Belarus, and I'm pretty sure they are right now in some Baltic state. I think maybe in Poland, not sure. Lithuania, maybe. Doesn't really matter, but yeah, even like big rock bands like DDT, like B2, B2, which is a band from Belarus actually. From it, now it's kind of they kind of considered like a Russian band, but they've been actually founded in Babruisk, in a smaller kind of city in Belarus. Once again, like DDT, people even probably in the government of Russia grew up on, or should have grown up on, rock bands like this, like DDT, like Bidva, should have listened to them. And obviously there are like other newer bands, younger bands, which obviously like people who are younger are more likely to be against this war, or wars in general, in particular against obviously dictatorial regimes, totalitarianism, and things like that, right? But it's interesting that yeah, even bands like older, like that they would be basically considered something like, I don't know, like Coldplay or like U2, something like, oh, maybe not U2 because they're like absolutely giant, but yeah, maybe like a Coldplay or whatever, something like that. if you want to compare it with something. And same with B2, B2, also very big band. But yeah, and then basically they like journalists asked certain clubs, certain like restaurants, wherever, can you actually sing those songs? Like, for example, if it's like a karaoke bar or whatever. No, not really. Unfortunately, like not allowed to do it now. So just think about it. Like, okay, like if you're living in any Western country, right? First of all, especially if you're like living in US, like, guys, remember 2016 to 2020, everybody but their grandma was talking shit on Trump on Twitter. How many people got jailed for that? They were calling Trump actual like dictator, fucking Nazi, whatever. All of the epithets, just because they didn't like the character of that shit, of that cunt. And he did some heinous shit, mostly putting putting that fifth judge, basically changing the um, highest court, Supreme Court of the United States, right, to basically being Republican, which obviously now led to this, I think, right, Roe versus Wade, and abortion rights and all of these kind of things. He did his fair shit part, right? But how many people got jailed? How many people got banned from like talking, not from, because of their speech, right? How many of them got banned from performing at concerts or things like that? None. And this is what's actually happening in real dictatorship states. That's why it kind of triggers me a little bit when people who live in UK, Germany, United States, whatever, Canada, they compare some of the shitty decisions of their government, or attempts, even maybe not even decisions yet, but attempts to create some heinous laws, as like, oh no, we're living in a fucking dictatorship state, oh blah blah blah. No, people, you don't, and it's really crucial and important for you to realize that you don't, so that you can actually fight when you still have time, basically, and not be just a passive observer of politics. Because I feel like this is something, like, this is a major downside of all the educational system, I think, across the globe, that it makes you not care really about politics, and it kind of presents it as if it's some kind of a TV show or something, like entertainment or whatever, which in fact it is something that every citizen should be involved, actually, and everybody should kind of, get at least some understanding of what's going on. And this is something that should be carefully managed and carefully sort of gardened in a way that, in such a way that politicians couldn't, without the major approval of like bigger part of the country, right? And I would put it like at 80% of the country should approve some bigger changes, like whatever, voting for Brexit, for example, or shit like that. It shouldn't be 50-50 with actual um with actual attendance rates at like whatever 30 or 40%, which means that basically fourth of, or even like fifth of a country decides for the rest of the people. This is absolute garbage, but that's like a video. This is like a whole video topic I should do some other time. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is, no, guys, you don't live in a dictatorship state. You're not living in authoritarian even states or totalitarian states. You're just living with shitty government. And that shitty government you can at least influence through elections, through protests, which are allowed in your countries. And here it is not. And here, if you are a musician who, like DDT, was basically singing against war back in probably when back at Afghanistan or like Chechen wars, something like that. He was banned basically under USSR. He was allowed to play in Russia, and now he's getting banned again, basically in Russia and in Belarus, whatever. So the guy, certain people from that list went from totalitarian USSR through 3 period of like at least potential to become a democracy, wherever, to now getting back into totalitarianism again. Just think about how shit is that. Okay. I'm not even sure if I should like basically one of the creator or the creator of quite a big company in Komi region in Belarus that employed around 500 people basically published a few posts in Facebook, actually, not VK, because usually it is VK, which is like Russian copycat of Facebook. No, actually in Facebook, he negatively he gave like a negative opinion basically about Russian invasion of Ukraine, and negatively said about potato Führer. And yeah, now he's facing 9 years, or was he facing 9 years? Oh no, we don't know how much of a sentence he's facing basically right now, but he's been detained basically. And by the way, in this country of Belarus, if you say something negative about the president, which is not a president, is a usurper and a dictator, and the one who stole the elections. If you by the way say even things that I just said, that's at least 5 years, probably like closer to 10 years of jail time. So that man basically faces for criticism of the president, if not a president again, usurper, and for criticism of absolute unjust Russian war against Ukraine, with the help of Belarus, with the help of fucking dictator Lukashenko. He's gonna be facing jail time, long jail time. I don't know who's gonna get out first, Lukashenko out of this fucking life, or this guy from jail. But the fact of the matter is, this is what real dictatorship is, and that's not fucking joke. No joke here at all. Okay. Quick news: AliExpress, which is kind of consumer facing part of Alibaba website, giant, obviously China website, basically wants to import into Russia original parts for cars, because obviously car brands are exiting Russia, stopping the production, stopping sales, and obviously stopping supplies of parts. And as we've discussed previously with planes, well, cars will also break down, right? Interestingly, and I didn't know that actually AliExpress, it's okay. They're talking about AliExpress Russia. That besides Alibaba Group, also basically giant portion of it is controlled by oligarchs who are directly involved and directly talk basically to Putin. VK and Alisher Usmanov, these are people who basically have direct contact with Putin, or something like that. And so, yeah, basically, AliExpress wants now to import quite a lot of things from all the different brands, from BMW, Ford, Daimler, which is Mercedes, right? Cadillac, Volvo, whatever. I'm gonna put the link if you want to take a look at it. You can translate it, I'm pretty sure, easily into English version, or maybe there is even an English version. I'll check it, and if there's an English version, I'm gonna put it into the description. But the fact of the matter is that, speaking about the sanctions, right? If this is how it's gonna continue, if this fucking maneuver will be allowed, well, these sanctions might as well like not exist. yes, sanctions on like oil and gas, and the fact that Europe is basically has basically eliminated or almost eliminated Russia as their energy supplier. This is great, obviously, because Russian budget is in shitter already, and there wasn't even that many months of sanctions, really. And so, but yeah, the rest of the sanctions, it's kind of, I don't know. We'll see about how well they will actually work. But yeah, just wanted to present to you this news, that actual place, AliExpress. And by the way, like this is why like the West, rightfully so, should go into like an political and economic, not war, but at least like confrontation, let's put it that way, with China. Because this like 48% of this like Russian AliExpress is owned by China, by China's Alibaba group. And if they would have sort of the presence of mind, I guess, and to be like on the right side of the history, they could easily block this whole situation and say like, no, like we forbid you to do this. Yet they don't do it. And so China, in a way, also helping out Russia, right? I mean, we've known this for quite some time now, but they continue to do this, basically, which is shit. And I think that let's put it that way. When Trump was trying to create like economic war with China, I thought it was a wrong decision. However, he probably saw things that obviously I'm just like some fuck up guy in a shitty country, and he had access basically to way more information. So he saw things that I haven't seen, and there is, there is some logic to actually cut off or not all the, you will not be able to cut off all the trade with China, but to at least like show China that they should be partners with the West. Withhold all the like crucial crucial technologies, microchip technologies, things like that, and show China that no, like if you want to be alone in this, like if you don't want to play sort of by the rules of kind of free and democratic world, then there will be consequences. Then the manufacturing will exit China and move to South America, move to India, move later probably to like some African countries. There are still a lot of poorer places who would happily host all those factories and whatnot, manufacturing things like that. So, yeah, it's time. It's time for China to maybe rethink some things. But yeah, China is shifting into complete totalitarianism. As always, with all those fucking communist regimes, they all finish the same way, and they all collapse at some point or another. So let's just hope the collapse of China will happen quickly and will not kill millions and millions and millions of people. All right. Today we've got quite a lot of news from Belarus. Administrator of a group in VK, right? VK group. За єдину державну мову у Білорусі for one kind of state language in Belarus. Владимир Будьковский, Будьковец, has been sentenced to 3 years of colony just for moderating that group and for publishing news about Belarusian language. He's been found guilty of creation of an extremist formation. Extremist group, because you're posting news about Belarus and you want in Belarus to have a Belarusian language as your official language, which I do not support, for example, because Belarusian language is basically almost a dead language at this point, and 90 probably 5% of people, or probably even like 99% of people in Belarus, they use Russian language as their main language. However, just for expressing that in Belarus, and for moderating news about Belarusian language, that you should use Belarusian language and have Belarusian language as your official language, the only official language, because now it is Russian and Belarusian language. The guy has been sentenced to 3 years of colony. Now tell me, who is actual extremist? The usurper and dictator mustache potato fucking Führer Lukashenko? Or a guy who lives in Belarus and wanted Belarusian language to be the language of his country? Riddle me this, how that makes any sense. Because it doesn't. Because it fucking doesn't. But that's, once again, this is what's living in a dictatorship state actually is. You put your face out there, you display some opinion that the government doesn't agree with, you get sentenced. You get a sentence, you get put to jail. Great, right? Let's just finish. I know that there was like a giant earthquake basically in Turkey and in Syria, and this is old news actually. About 17,000 dead. Because the latest news I've seen was more than 30,000 dead, which is insane. And this is also the other side of authoritarian regimes, because Turkey is, if it's not like totalitarian regime, it is authoritarian regime, and it's sliding more and more into authoritarianism with this Erdogan fucking cunt. Because where there is like authoritarianism and things like that, there is corruption. Where corruption is, there is improper buildings are being built without like proper how to put it, without proper measures to be able to withstand earthquakes, because it's not the first time there is an earthquake in that region. And in fact, like I've seen on Twitter, like scientists warned that there's gonna be big earthquake in that region. I think since 2008 or 10, people were warning basically Turkey and Syria and like basically people in that region, especially in Turkey, because obviously cities like Istanbul, wherever, they're very deeply populated or densely populated, and if things go wrong, if some kind of earthquake happens, there is possibility for collapse and deaths of, well, as we see now, of thousands and thousands of people. And why? Because you don't build properly. If your buildings aren't built to withstand earthquakes of magnitudes of that nature, like 7 point something it was, I think, right? 7.6 or something like that. 7.7. And if your buildings aren't built to withstand it, well, you're gonna get this. You're gonna get this absolute fucking tragedy. And why they're not built like that? Well, because some corrupt fuck here, some corrupt fuck there said, listen, we didn't have serious earthquakes for the past whatever 20, 30 years, so whatever, let me I will allow you to build this. You give me some little bribe, whatever. We shake hands. We get the deal. We're gonna figure out shit later, right? So that is absolute tragedy. This is insane. Like, I've seen obviously the photos of this devastation. It's yeah, it is terrible. And it just shows, like how fragile everything is. Like, it's just so, like, people are fighting, people are having like all those different like political opinions and things like that, while the whole earth can just fucking move and swallow or destroy like buildings and kill thousands in a span of like minutes, hours. Like, we like, I feel like as a society, as a like civilization, not society, like a civilization, we've turned like a weird corner somewhere. Like, things didn't go where they should go somehow, because like this is tragedy. This is insanity, right? We should try like to minimize suffering like this instead of create even more suffering, like Russia is doing right now, obviously in Ukraine, right? Or like some other regimes, like fucking in China, whatever is doing, right? Like, or in Venezuela, whatever, right? It always baffles me so much that somehow, like, more often than not, lives got okay, at least, so we don't kind of realize that things can go really badly, really terribly, yeah, in a few moments. And we should try to work to minimize those potential moments instead of, yeah, fighting between each other, because there is the whole universe, the whole earth, cosmos that's working kind of against us, really. And yet people still do find additional sort of troubles and problems for themselves. It kind of, it baffles me, it riddles me. I don't understand this, but yeah, let's just finish on that. It's terrible, and don't know what more to say. It's absolutely terrible. It's devastating. All right. That was episode 19 of Critical Discussions. Follow for more, subscribe to YouTube channel. If it's already available as a podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Obviously, video version is on YouTube. Share shorter clips. I'm trying to post shorter clips about the themes that I'm going through in these episodes as separate clips, so you can just watch them or just share those particular little moments. Yeah, I would really appreciate, once again, if you share the videos, share the audio, share, and yeah, subscribe, follow, things like that. Also, once again, all the relevant links to the articles, to the media that you should take a look at, in the description. And yeah, till the next one.